The Samsung Galaxy Note 8 is finally here. So it's been announced by Samsung yesterday, and now the Samsung Galaxy Note 8 is now Samsung's flagship smartphone for 2017. Now, if you're coming from a Samsung Galaxy S8 or an S8 Plus, you might be disappointed because Samsung has already unveiled a phone that's better than, this, just a few months after the Samsung Galaxy S8's unveil. So yeah, let's take a look at all the changes and improvements from the S8 to the Note 8 and see if it's actually worth upgrading to the Note 8 or not. So yeah, as always, grab some snacks and enjoy. Okay, so starting off with number one, we have the design. So design-wise, are we getting any changes? Well, yes, because this is a Note line, so the Note line comes with a few changes, design changes over the Galaxy S line. So for example, the Note 8 is wider by 1.2 millimeters, taller, by the way, by 3 millimeters, and also thicker by 0.4 millimeters than the Samsung Galaxy S8 Plus. So it is a larger phone and a more difficult phone to hold in the hand overall. And there are basically two reasons for this dimension increase. So the first one is the S Pen, which, same as on pretty much every Note phone, is included into, the body of the phone. So the phone does need to be a bit thicker and also wider. And then the second reason for being, larger is the display. So the Samsung Galaxy Note 8 comes with a slightly larger display than the S8, so the S8 Plus actually. So it's 6.3 inches instead of the 6.2 that we got with the S8 Plus. But yeah, besides that, everything else display-wise is basically the same. So we got the exact same 2960 by 1440 resolution, so same as on the S8 and the S8 Plus. And on the Note 8, this actually translates to a PPI of 522, which is slightly lower since now we do have a larger display. Now, I know, we were all hoping for a 4K display with the S8 and then with the Note 8. That didn't happen, unfortunately, so it's possibly going to happen with the Samsung Galaxy S9 early next year. Hopefully, I'm really hoping for that. Now, most people don't really care about this, or they won't actually need a 4K display on a phone. Now, I just love the Gear VR, so this is by far the best mobile VR option out there, and a 4K display would make it look twice as sharp because, now you can basically count the pixels. But yeah, other than that, no display improvements at all. Okay, moving on to section number 3. What about the camera? Everyone cares about a camera and a smartphone, so any changes from the Galaxy S8? Well, we do get a few. So the biggest change is actually the dual camera module, which was missing from the Samsung Galaxy S8. So now we have two cameras on the back of the Note 8, and they work pretty much the same as they do on the iPhone 7 Plus. So they are used for zooming in instead of something like the LG G5 or the LG G6, on which the dual camera modules were actually used for taking a wide-angle shot. So we now get 2x optical zoom, and this basically means that we can zoom in twice without losing any quality, since it's optical zoom, not digital zoom. That's thanks to that telephoto lens. So this is really, really cool. But what's even better than a dual camera module is a dual camera module that has OIS on both the modules. Unlike on the iPhone 7 Plus, on which only the main module, so the wide-angle one, had OIS. The telephoto one, so basically if you zoomed in, you didn't have OIS or optical image stabilization anymore. So the shots were worse in low light and also less stabilized. This is not a case with the Note 8. Okay, now when it comes to the aperture, we get the exact same aperture as on the S8 and the S8 Plus. So that's an f1.7 aperture on the main lens. And then we get a f2.4 aperture on the telephoto lens, which is a pretty big improvement over something like an iPhone 7 Plus, which comes with f2.8 aperture on the telephoto lens. So it's much, much better in low light as the iPhone 7 Plus was. And then we also get a bokeh mode effect. So your portrait shots look amazing. But what's really cool about the Note 8's camera is that you can actually switch. So when you take a photo, it actually takes 3 photos. So one of them is the regular photo. The second one is the zoomed in photo, so the one taken with a telephoto lens. And then the third one is the bokeh, so to say, portrait mode effect that you get with the iPhone 7 Plus. And then you can actually switch between those. You can actually pick between those afterwards, after taking the shot, which is pretty cool. You don't have to take 3 photos. It automatically takes just one with all 3 of them combined. Awesome. Moving on to the specs. So do we get any spec improvements from the S8? Well, in a way we kind of do. So CPU wise, we get the same processor as on the S8 and the S8 Plus. So that's the Snapdragon 835 if you live in the US or China. and then you get the Exynos 8895 for the international market in Asia. Now they're pretty similar. I'm not going to go into too much detail on this, but overall the Exynos 8895 is a better option. So you get better battery life and a bit better performance, since the Exynos chips are made by Samsung instead of Qualcomm, like the Snapdragon 835. So yeah, basically in real world and day-to-day use, you won't be able to tell the difference, but if you can, go with the Exynos model. Okay, so the only spec improvement that we do get over the Samsung Galaxy S8 or the S8 Plus is when it comes to the RAM. So we are getting 6 gigabytes of RAM now instead of 4 gigabytes like we had with the S8 and the S8 Plus. And normally I wouldn't say that this is a huge upgrade, and that's if this was iOS or stock Android. But since this is Samsung, Samsung is still having, unfortunately, quite a few issues when it comes to fluidity and performance on TouchWiz on the S8. And 6 gigabytes of RAM is actually going to make a pretty big difference on the Note 8, I'm guessing. I really want to test this and see the actual performance differences and the actual RAM management to see how much better it is on the Note 8. So definitely stay tuned for that if you want to see an in-depth ultimate speed test between those two devices. Here to describe. But yeah, moving on to section number 5, we have the special features. Okay, so when it comes to the features, the main one that you get as an extra is the S Pen. And the S Pen is actually a pretty good tool. So it's built into your Note and you can simply remove it whenever you wish. So that's pretty cool. And then same as on the Note 7, you can even take notes even when the display is off, since you have an OLED display. So everything is saved into S Notes, which by the way is now called Samsung Notes. But I don't know, personally, I don't really use Samsung services because you're restricted to just using Samsung devices. I do prefer using Google services since you can use those on any major operating system and device. And yeah, S Pen for me personally wouldn't be that useful. It would be cool for signatures and obviously highlighting stuff. Like on the Note 8, you can actually hover over a currency and it would, convert that currency into your home currency, for example. But yeah, let me know in the comments if you use Samsung apps or if you use Google apps or if you use Apple apps. Which one of these do you prefer? But yeah, other than that, no really big new features or improvements over the Samsung Galaxy S8. Now, OS-wise, the Note 8 comes with Android 7.1. So here's the thing, Samsung is so behind when it comes to software updates. So Google has just released Android 8.0. So 7.0 is actually more than a year old. And by the way, this is what we have on the S8. So the S8 still runs on 7.0, which is like almost actually more than a year old. 7.1 is almost 1 year old. It turns 1 year in October. And Samsung releases a 2017 phone, the Note 8, with a 1 year old operating system. I mean, obviously, if you wish, you can install a custom ROM, and you can even get 8.0, but you'll be missing out on TouchWiz and all, the S Pen features. So you can do that if you really wish. But let me know in the comments what do you think about Samsung's updates cycle. I think it's really bad. Okay, so what about the battery? Do we get any battery improvements with the Note 8 since it's also a larger device? Well, not really, quite the opposite. So on the S8 Plus, we have a 3500 mAh battery, and now on the Note 8, we have a 3300 mAh battery, so 200 mAh lower than the Samsung Galaxy S8 Plus. Now, I'm a bit unsure as to how much this would actually affect the actual battery life on the Note 8, and that's because the CPU is the same. We do get more RAM, which affects battery life, and then the screen is also a bit larger, which also affects battery life. And then the battery is lower than on the Samsung Galaxy S8 Plus. Now, the Samsung Galaxy S8 Plus's battery was actually pretty good. So I can definitely get through a full day of usage, even with intensive use with the Samsung Galaxy S8 Plus. So the Note 8 should be a tiny bit worse. Obviously, that's unless Samsung did some amazing TouchWiz optimization, which I kind of doubt. So yeah, the battery life should be a bit worse than on the Samsung Galaxy S8 Plus. But if this worked for you, then the Note 8 is definitely going to work for you as well. Okay, so what about the models, the storage options, any changes here? So in terms of the storage options, we get 64 gigabytes on both the S8 and the S8 Plus as the baseline option. Now you can also expand this even further with a microSD card, so that's also supported, which is actually really awesome if you think about it. I mean, the Samsung phones, the flagship at least, they're the few remaining phones that still have a micro SD card slot. Now, don't get me wrong, it's not the equivalent. A 128 gigabytes Samsung Galaxy S8 is not the equivalent in storage speed to the iPhone 8 with 128 gigabytes. Obviously, you cannot compare micro SD card with internal storage speeds. It's a pretty big difference. But yeah, the SD card is much slower than internal storage, but it's pretty good to to have the option. Now, speaking of options, there are some regions in which you can get the higher storage options, so such as the 128 gigabytes or the 256 gigabytes. But for the most part, you'll only be able to get it in 64 gigabytes. So yeah, what about the price now? So price-wise, the Note 8 is more expensive. So it's about £100 more expensive than the S8 Plus in the UK, which was already crazily expensive. And in the US, it's about $130 more expensive than the S8 Plus. And this would obviously be for the baseline 64 gigabytes model. Okay, so in the end, the question is, the big question, should you upgrade from the S8 or the S8 Plus to the Samsung Galaxy Note 8? Definitely not. No, don't upgrade unless you plan on using the S Pen on a daily basis, because the only major improvements that you do get are the slightly larger 6.3 inches display. Then you also get a dual camera module, and that's pretty much it. Apart from that, it's still an S8 Plus. That's a bit wider, obviously. But yeah, these are the only big changes. However, if you're coming from an older smartphone, such as the S6, the S7, or even a Note 5 or a Note 7, why not? This would actually make a lot of sense, since not only you are getting the same Samsung Galaxy S8 style design, so that really beautiful infinity display with almost no bezels, but you're also getting the functionality of the S Pen and all the extra functionality of the Note and a dual camera. So overall, it is a better phone than the S8 Plus, but it's not that much better. So don't upgrade from the S8 or the S8 Plus. Upgrade if you wish, if you have an older phone. But yeah, other than that, if you want to see an unboxing of the Note 8, by the way, I've done one of this clone. So this is a Note 8 clone, and I've done a video, an unboxing and a review of this clone in case you're curious if you want to check it out. It's a pretty cool and interesting video. Also, feel free to subscribe to my channel if you want to see more Samsung Galaxy Note 8 coverage and S8 coverage. So yeah, and don't forget to enable notifications so that you're also notified whenever I upload a brand new epic video. Let me know in the comments, what do you guys think about the Note 8 so far? Do you think it's a pretty big improvement over the S8? Or do you think it's just, more of an improvement for everyone who had a Note 7 or Note 5? Because it doesn't explode. Haha, that was a bad joke. Other than that, feel free to give this video a like if you have enjoyed it, let me know. And this has been pretty much it. So thank you for watching until the end. I'm Daniel, and I'll see you guys in my next one. Son of Tech, signing out. Cheers.